Hello and welcome to the Software Engineering Unlocked podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michaela, and today I have the pleasure to talk to Nicolas Dular, a senior software engineer at GitLab. But before I start, let me tell you a little bit about my latest project, awesomecodreviews.com. Yeah, all my work on code reviews has now its own dedicated home. At awesomecodreviews.com, you find articles about code reviews best practices, code review checklists, news about the latest research on code reviews, and of course, workshops and courses I offer around this topic. So please hop over to awesomecodreviews.com and check out my latest work. But now back to Nicolas. Nicolas is a senior full-stack engineer at GitLab. Before joining GitLab, he was a senior software engineer at PSPDF Kit. And today I want to talk with him about his experience becoming an engineering manager. Like many, Nicolas was dreaming of advancing his career in this direction. But after 1 year, he had to come clear with himself that this role is not what he wanted to do long term. So he changed back to an individual contributor role. I'm so excited to talk with him today about his experience. So Nicolas, welcome to this show. Great you're here.
Thank you. Hello and welcome, Michaela. Thanks for having me. Really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, I know 1 year, so we are friends, right? And one year ago, you were telling me about this awesome role that you're now in, that you're an engineering manager. And I know that at the beginning it was a little bit like stress, hectic. Obviously, you had to, learn new things. But now you're back. How did that all come about? And what were you expecting of this role? And why didn't it work out as you actually planned?
Yeah, and where to start? So last year in 2021, in May, I finally had the opportunity to become a manager. So I always told my manager, I want to step up, be a manager. I like taking over responsibilities, like taking over, like helping others and overviewing projects. So I thought like this is the logical step for me, right? And yeah, then now we are here again 1 year afterwards, and I'm back at the actual position I started at GitLab. And what happened? So I had the opportunity to try it out first. This is one of the principles at GitLab. You can be an acting engineering manager. So I tried it out if I wanted. After the first 3 months, I said like, yeah, this actually is nice. I do something different now after being a developer for 10 years. And then I thought, let's go for being an interim engineering manager where I can gain experience for the actual promotion. And so I did this as well. And yeah, after 6 months, I thought like, yeah, I will go for the promotion. And I got promoted. It was amazing. But after like 6-7 months, I then like realized, oh, this is maybe not what I wanted after all. And yeah, that made the hard decision to actually step back. And everyone who is a manager says like, this is a completely different job. And when you are not a manager and want to become one, you think like, yeah, of course. I mean, it's a manager. It's not an engineer. But what it actually means is it's a really different job. And I think you need to try it yourself actually to experience that.
Yeah. So this sounds all really interesting because so you first say you want to try something out. So is everybody allowed to try something out? Like if I'm a junior engineer, can I try out to be an engineering manager, or do I have to be already somewhat capable or like, I don't know how to phrase it.
I think you need to be a senior engineer. I might be able also with trying it out as an intermediate. I'm not 100% sure though. So please don't quote me. And we have an open handbook, so I'm sure that's in there.
Okay.
Yeah. And otherwise you can try it out and go back. And that's the nice part. So I wanted it, but I always wanted to be able to go back all the time. And being an acting or interim manager gave me this opportunity to just go back if I want to.
Yeah, I'm interested in this concept of trying something out. Like how is that communicated? Like if you're an engineer, a senior engineer, and you want to be an engineering manager, must there be a position that you can try it out or not?
Yeah. So for moving between different roles, like from an engineer to a designer, like this is harder to try out. Like you can't try it out, but management is something you can try out, especially in the engineering function. We have this. So there needs to be, of course, the opportunity. As a team grows, they need a new manager, but maybe don't have one, or like there's a reorg, you need to split teams, something like that. And if you like talk with the manager, they can promote you to be an acting engineering manager for this time. It's also, I think, capped even to a specific date, like 3 or 6 months. And after that, you can decide, depending on the company, if there's even a need for a management position. As I stepped back to be an IC again, fortunately, one of my direct reports back then, they stepped up and be an engineering manager, although they knew like they never want to become one. And it's totally fine, but they wanted to have this experience and try it out. So it's perfect opportunity, right?
So you're stepping back, they're looking, they don't have to immediately have one because another person can act as an engineering manager. They can try it out. Oh, the baby is also talking here. So they can try it out. And then while you're hiring, for example, internally or externally, and then they're stepping back when the other person is ready to take it over.
Exactly, yeah.
Like this. Okay, yeah, this is really interesting. So what happened in this time? Because first you had like this acting and you were thinking it's fine. You went over to become an intermediate one and then even a full engineering manager.
Yeah.
And then you realized it's not what you want to do. How was this process? What were the tasks and why did it change?
Yeah, in the beginning, there was so many things I had to learn. So I was completely focusing on that. And after some time, like 8 or 9 months, like there's definitely enough things I could have learned, but I then was able to more focus on like, how am I as a manager? Like, what do I like about this job? I was able to step back once again and evaluate. And the first weeks were like super exciting and overwhelming. And as I said, like it's a different job. You jump between projects. You need to learn to delegate, be better at communication. And what I noticed though, I'm like, this is one of the things. So I'm more of an introvert, and I can sit on the screen for 10 hours and debug a bug and fix it, and I'm happy. But also as an engineer at GitLab, we maybe have like 1 to 2 hours of meetings per week, which is amazing. It allows you like to have enough async time and like deeply focused time. But as a manager, you mostly spend your time in meetings. So I had one-on-ones, I had 8 direct reports. So I was in meetings for 10 to 14 hours. And this sounds maybe even like not many hours for other managers, but for me, it was a lot as an introvert. So this drained me. It was Wednesday and I was already drained for this whole week because of these meetings. And so that was definitely the one factor for me. And another one is this emotional burden, actually. Like burden is maybe the wrong word here, but it costs more emotional time for myself. Small things happen, like a direct report tells you something and you somehow have this emotional part that you want to deal with, or you also have maybe interviewing someone and reject a candidate. And this was hard for me. And so it cost me emotional energy all the day long. And I'm just not the right person for this, it seems. And one of the things I talked to another back then interim manager. She's amazing. And so we talked with each other and she was telling me like, yeah, one-on-ones are the best things of my day. And I get so energized by that. And I was there after my 3rd day of one-on-ones and said like, I can't anymore. I can't do this, robbing me so much energy. Although I like talking with people and like all of them, it's just harder for me. So I saw, okay, maybe I'm not the right person for this job. They are definitely the right person, but I'm not, because I don't get energized by it. It costs me more energy than I get from it. Yeah.
I think it's really important to feel your own energy level, right? Not being, taken away by what I'm supposed to do, or, people are supposed to get a manager role, and it's a next step up in your career, and then you're overlooking that you're actually not feeling really good about it, right? I think this is really it's probably a problem that a lot of people have, or a mistake that a lot of people do, right? That they feel like, oh, this is so important, and I have this nice title, and shiny, and maybe, I don't know, maybe more salary if you are a manager, right?
Yeah, exactly. And after stepping back, I really noticed I don't care too much about the title anymore. I mean, I also would say that at GitLab, it's the title is not so super important. You can influence and change things, even though like you maybe a junior or intermediate engineer. It doesn't really matter. Like as long like what the content matters a lot, and so that was no advantage there in that sense. And I then stepped back and was thinking, do I want to become a staff engineer now? And my answer was initially, well, if I get to it, maybe, but it's not what I need to have. I don't need staff title now. I'm just happy to work on something that I care about. And that's it. That's my goal, actually. It's not the title itself. So I learned this as well after stepping back. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's very natural. When I was at university, I also always dreamt of this, career and going up the corporate ladder and all these titles. And it seemed as something that we should strive for, like also the marks that we get in school, right? You want the one, or an A in another country, and so on, right? And not a B, and so on. And so it also seemed for me that this is important. And over the time, I realized actually it's not that important, right? It's important if you are energized by what you're doing, if you feel good, and then you are getting also better at it, right? Because if it's taking your energy, you can spend a lot of energy, but because you're not getting it back, it's not sustainable. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely, I fully agree. It's mostly about energy management, not about time management or something. And I then also was thinking, what is the actual career progression? So I already didn't enjoy like being a manager too much. Like, what would be the next step? Maybe senior manager or director. And I didn't see myself at all in this position. It's even more stress. I don't know how this and everyone, like even managers do it, like how they can deal with it. As I said, like I'm the wrong person for this job. Although like at least to save myself a bit, like I got good feedback. People seem to like me as a manager, and I hopefully did great work, at least based on the feedback. But I also didn't enjoy it. And then I saw also you can do good work, but it doesn't matter really. It matters like how you feel. And yeah, so looking back at the engineering progression as an IC, okay, maybe I could go to staff. Maybe there's something above there, but I don't care too much on one side. But on the other side, if I would be able to get there, it's fine. Like I see this is still an individual contributor role. It's a different job. So I saw like, okay, career progression wise, it's okay to go this ladder instead of the other.
Yeah. And I think what you were saying about it doesn't matter so much how good you are at what you're doing, but it's also important how you feel, right? I was working in a nursing home when I was still back in school during the summer break. And I believe that I was really, really nice to the people and I did a really good job there, but it was just breaking me. I was sad every day. It was emotionally so draining. And I probably was one of the nicest nurses there, right? And maybe did the best job, but I wasn't able to do it. And I always got sick. I always got sick, really, really sick, like high fever. So like the body telling me, you can't go in there anymore. It's like, it's too depressing and too. And so, as you're saying, it doesn't mean that if you're not doing your manager job, that you are not good at it. It just means that it wasn't the right thing for you in that time. And I think that it can maybe change also over time if it's due to external factors, maybe, right? Maybe you're not right now not in the right place to do something, right? And this could be not only a manager or individual contributor role, but something else maybe, right? Where you have to travel, right? Let's say traveling is part of your job, then sometimes it could be that this is the right thing for you to do. I enjoy traveling a lot, a couple of years back. And right now, at one point I was also sick a little bit of traveling, like being in these hotel rooms alone. And then there comes a new time and you think like now traveling could be, something that I enjoy again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I also want to come back to something that you were talking about. And this is, first I was so occupied with learning, these new skills and what I have to do and so on. I think this is also extremely valuable, that it's not from day one that you know something, but you have to grow into that role. And then you were saying, I took a step back. I think this is so important, right? So how was that exactly for you?
It took vacation to get to this step, actually. Yeah, in the beginning, I'm so grateful for the team. I started in this team. I knew nothing about the technology or anything, and I just observed. I asked them, like, in the second week, I made a 3-page long questionnaire for the team, like, hey, how is this actually working? And it was actually nice because this is the initial effect you have. You have no idea, and I like being naive. I like being asking these naive questions because I later, like half a year later, saw, oh, my questions were leading to something where we maybe should work on. Yeah, and so after half a year or something, and I took a longer break, like a 2-week vacation, and then I saw this immediate like stress relief, and I was then like clearly seeing also with my partner, okay, I'm feeling much better and happier now that I'm away a bit from the stress. I should rethink, but at this point I was still thinking, but that's what I always wanted. Like last 10 years, I was always, okay, I'll go for management at some point. And breaking this mindset was tough for me, but I also saw it made me much more happier now and relieved after stepping back. And back then, when I went for the promotion, I still saw I have this impact. Like I can help others. I can see them grow. I can help the team to work better, maybe, hopefully. And I saw like, okay, while I'm suffering somehow, as I'm stressed, I also see like how much more impact I can have and how the nice parts of the roles are. And so I was still going for it because I liked it.
What I'm also interested in is how did the others, feel about it? I can imagine so what I understood is that it's not your team that you stepped up, right? Like it's your team and now you're becoming a manager. And so it's your direct colleagues that now you are a superior of, sort of.
Yeah.
But you went to another team. But still, how did you experience that, being a new manager, having to learn all of that, and then, interacting with the other people?
Yeah, I made it clear from the beginning that I'm not the expert. I'm learning this role as I'm going. So please give me feedback. And I had some people who gave me honest feedback, and I really appreciate that. And I also worked with a product manager quite close, and she gave me, like, we had weekly one-on-ones. She gave me feedback on what I should maybe do different because she has experience working with other managers. So I was always pretty clear, like, I'm learning. Please give me feedback. I'm sorry if I missed something. I just try to be better every day. And I never felt being superior or anything. That was always for me, like, I'm here to serve the team. Like whatever we try to do, I will help you. That was my perspective on how like I see management. Like you provide context, you help them, like you try to make everything more efficient, like you help people when they are stuck. And yeah, that's how I saw this role.
That's really nice framing. I liked it a lot. Did you feel that you have to be somehow a wall also, from even higher up management to the team, that you're shielding them a little bit from, something that could distract them, or, from something that...
I expected it, that this is part of the manager job, and maybe it is. I didn't perceive this as at our team a lot. Like we had great product management who had a clear direction, and like so it was totally clear what we want to do. There was nothing I should defend the team on. Like that barely happened. So that was nice to see. Like it's part of the culture, I guess, then.
Yeah, cool. So what about GitLab itself? Is there some training that you go through when you're doing that? Or, you just read on the internet some blogs about how management works and then you do your job? Or...
Yeah, a mix actually in that case, because with everything at GitLab, everything is documented. Like most of the things are documented. And when you are starting at GitLab, you have this huge onboarding issue where you go through all the tasks, you like create accounts, like you read up on how to work at GitLab. And it's pretty much the same as a manager. Like you have this huge onboarding issue where they provide you with resources, like maybe read these blog posts about like how to manage, maybe read this book. And I think after 5 or 6 months, we also had an initiative for new managers and actually existing managers as well, like to become a better manager. Like we had this group. Every week we had 1-hour meeting of like learning about like management and different traits of a manager, like how you are as a manager, how you coach someone. And we had these small groups, we had resources. So there was a lot of support in that regard from a resource perspective. And like I also had a meeting, a one-on-one with 2 managers every week who were in the same position, going from acting to interim to actual manager. So we were talking about how they perceive the role right now. And it's so nice you see other perspectives. Everyone has different issues they have to deal with. And you see other management jobs at GitLab. It's so nice to see, and you can exchange like, hey, I had this issue. How do you deal with this? For example, I tried to communicate better to the team, and then one of the other managers told me like, yeah, he creates an issue every week to inform the team about all the updates they should know about. And I was thinking, this is genius. So this is coming from another department, and I implemented it in my team back then. And it helped the team so much. They really appreciated it. So they were clear, like if they read this issue, they know everything they should know and all the context for this week. And this is like these small things that you pick up by talking to the others and gain more experience. So this was really nice. Yeah.
But so this is more crowd knowledge, right? So that you have to pick up yourself and look around. I wonder if there is something like for engineering, very often organizations have some consistency, right? They say, oh, we use GitLab and we use a CCI, CD pipeline, and we use, this pulse checker and this linter. And then somehow this becomes similar across the organization, not in every organization, obviously, but even, you go there and these are the steps and these are the processes that we are doing stuff. Is that similar for managers? Is there something like that says, oh, you should have one-on-one with each of your direct reports? For example?
As you can imagine, with everything being documented mostly at GitLab in the handbook, you find everything there, like how often you should have one-on-ones with your managers, like how the one-on-ones should be structured, what are the good questions you should ask, then we have tools to like maybe have all the metrics for a team. Then we have OKR tooling, of course, and like how to write OKRs and how to form them. And so, yes, everything there is like very well defined and documented. But it helps you a lot as a new manager. I was not knowing like, what should I do? And there's like a clear guidance, like this is how we want you to work, or like, it's more like this is how we think we should work. Of course, you can change things. I barely use the format that we had because I liked a different format in the one-on-one document. And so you can of course tweak things, but there's definitely a guideline for how to perform things there.
Okay, cool. So another question that I had for you, you were talking about 8 direct reports, and this is a lot. I mean, I hear of engineering managers in the first year and they have 1 direct report or like 2 direct reports. So it feels like, understandably, you're very drained with 8 direct, like I would even say with 8 direct reports, this is like the max of a team size. Like then you should be the manager of a manager already or something like this. Was that there from the beginning like this, or is that normal that, managers have so many direct reports?
I would need to look up the numbers, but it's definitely on the higher end. And I also had to hire three engineers actually during my time. So people moved teams, of course, and so you need to rehire. And I was thinking at the beginning like, oh wow, 8 engineers immediately to manage. On the other side, let's pretend I would have had 3 or 4 engineers. This gives you, unfortunately, exactly enough time, like maybe 3-4 hours per week more, where you're thinking, oh, maybe I should code. And this is definitely what you should not do as a manager, as a new one. I stopped coding immediately after I started. And if I would have just had like 3-4 reports, even though it's overwhelming and you shouldn't have time to code, you maybe think you have. So I was actually happy with a full team already with 8 engineers. I couldn't even think of coding. So this helped me like to be in the role completely at 100% immediately.
And did you miss it, the coding?
Yes, and I've written this in my blog post. So one of our common friends, right? I talked to him like 10 years ago and he asked me like, what do you want to do? And I said, yeah, I want to be a manager. And he just laughed at me and said like, nah, you like programming too much. You will realize that at some point, and it's so nice to create things. And yeah, he was right.
Martin, right?
Martin, exactly.
Yeah, and I think you have to realize that at one point. For example, I really like start things and then see that it's becoming something, right? Like we can't touch it, obviously, right? But it feels like we can touch it. We can stripe it probably, right? Or click it with the mouse or something. And as a manager, I think it's more of a task that never ends, right? So it's there's a problem, then you solve it, maybe half, because it's not always solvable, and and it's going on and so on, right?
Exactly. And you need to be so careful to not get into the details. So when you're at a meeting and there's a problem, as an engineer, you just jump on it. Like, say, this is the solution I think we have.
Yeah.
And as an engineering manager, you hold yourself back to the very end, let everyone talk, and don't propose anything that could the team lead to think like, oh, this is how we need to do it. Because although like I didn't feel like I'm in this manager position, and I had the feeling like my word counts now much, much more. And if I say we should do it that way, maybe it's just an opinion, but stated as a fact that we should do it. And yeah, as an engineer, it's easier. You just talk and you spin off ideas with others. And as a manager, you should be careful about doing this. And essentially, you're not the one doing the work. If I say, just refactor the service, there could be so many edge cases I will not think about, because I'm not the one in the code and who knows everything about it.
Yeah. And so how did you feel about people having problems and coming to you? Did they even come to you with their problems and telling you like this and that? And
yeah, absolutely. So I enjoyed this the most. Every time someone came in one-on-one and said, I'm stuck on this, or it doesn't matter like how they are stuck, even if it's just personally with how they work, or if it's a technical problem. I love there's this phrase of being a rubber duck. I love this. Like, I just ask questions because I'm so naive often to things, and so I ask the right questions apparently. So this was the favorite part of my job, talking with the engineers through technical issues, seeing them grow, and this was absolutely the favorite part of my job. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And were there some issues where you felt like this is absolutely overwhelming? You were talking a little bit about hiring and then making the decision not to hire somebody.
Yeah.
So what are other difficult decisions that you had experienced as a manager or situations?
One thing, this is part of our management training. One of the first things was, you're not their therapist. And people come with problems to you. They tell you about problems, and I do this as well. Like, I tell my manager, hey, I'm not effective this week in this case because it's so hot in Austria right now, but maybe about something personal I'm struggling with. And as a manager, I do not recommend going into depth here. Like, you should hear them. You should tell them like, hey, I understand you, and it's totally okay, but I'm not the right person to talk through this, right? We fortunately have services at GitLab that can help. Like, we have Modern Health, for example, where you have coaching sessions and therapist sessions, and they can be provided. Or my immediate resolution was always, please take time off. As we have unlimited PTO, it was an easy solution to step back maybe. And yeah, this was definitely the more emotional part that was hard on me. And as you mentioned, rejecting a candidate, I was in the same position as they are when I interviewed at GitLab or at other companies, and I got rejected, of course. And it feels so hard on one side, and the other side, it's just no, I'm sorry, we will not move forward with you. But on the other side, there's maybe a world that breaks up to some degree, and this was tough for me. Yeah,
I can also imagine, like, if you are telling no to somebody from external, it's challenging, but I can also imagine that in your team, let's say somebody has a problem and they have a problem for a longer time, and you see that it's really impacting their work and it's impacting their work long term, then you probably also have to act, right?
That's the thing that I didn't like about this job in the end. I have such a hard time when there's someone struggling and you need to act, but when is the right time? Like, right, and I never wanted to do this. I have to do this decision, and yeah, that's why I'm fortunately back again, and not need to do this.
It must be so hard, right? Like, because as you said, when is the right time? Now you say, oh, take 1 week off, and then you still see that the performance is not that good, and or they are distracted, and then at one point you have to do something. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, I see this with myself. Like, when I'm not feeling well and I tell it my manager, there is of course some point, like after a few weeks, or maybe if it takes longer, and I'm not productive because of some personal issue, it must be so hard for them. Like, how do they evaluate me then? Like, and it doesn't look good on like what I'm producing. Like, when do they make the cut? And that's a tough thing. And that's what I never want to decide on. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a tricky question for you. Now that you have seen both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
Should we be honest about struggling or should we hide it? Right? Because there's you could go and say, oh, I'm really struggling. Maybe you have headache still from, let's say, COVID or something, and you still have this headache, right? Should you tell it? Or, I think like after 3 weeks, I would be very resistant to still say, I'm still having headaches. Like there comes this point where you think, should I still say it? Or
maybe I'm too influenced, like GitLab has this transparency value that is very deep in our culture and in our values, actually. So I'm also on the team, be honest all the time. And in this case, always be honest with your manager. And this is a lesson that I also learned. So your manager doesn't know everything. Like they can't mind read you.
Yeah.
So they need to know. And when I tell them, hey, I'm struggling a bit with some personal issues, it will resolve in a few weeks or whatever, they know. Like when, for example, you look at data and see, oh, someone is not delivering or someone is not performing, oh, there has a reason to this. You need to figure out, is it will or skill? And if it's actually will and skill still there, but it's just not possible right now, you can understand it. And yeah, it's so much more important to just tell them like, hey, that's going up. I know about it. Because otherwise, how as a manager, let's say you see a decrease in performance, it's also a hard conversation to do, right? So if you come up with, hey, you're not performing well after 2 months, you're telling someone, and then you have this maybe even awkward conversation where someone tells you, well, I'm not doing well and feeling well, and it would have been much, much better to know upfront. Yeah. And I was super lucky. So I had the feeling I had the safe space with all my direct reports, and they were able to tell me everything. And this was invaluable.
Yeah. So one thing that comes to my mind when we're talking about this is also evaluating other people, right? I feel that this is not always easy, especially if we're talking about large numbers, right? So when I was working with PhDs, for example, at Microsoft, and we had this very close one-on-one relationship, right? I didn't have like more than 2 PhDs to supervise and to work with. Then it was extremely easy to say, well, this is the performance of that person. And it wasn't even like an abstract. We were working together, right? And so there wasn't really an evaluation. It was more like, maybe there's some, skills that they could improve, or you help them a little bit in this direct. But on the other hand, when I was teaching at university, we have a class of, let's say, 50 people. It's so difficult to even, there are a couple of people again. I think that this is human mind, right? So let's say again, 5, 8, 10 people that and then you feel you are very confident about knowing their skills and where they are. And then there are these 40 others that I felt like it's an educated guess, and you really had to have some instruments like tests to judge their skills or their wills and so on. So how was that for you with these 8 direct reports? I think 8 is large enough that it's already hard maybe to evaluate and to think, am I correct here with my assessment? Or
I think 8 is still possible, but so with 8 people it's still possible. What I noticed though is when I was in IC, I thought, oh, every merge request I'm working on, like my manager will look over that, or every issue. And after 1 week in the role, I noticed like it's absolutely not possible to do this. I glimpsed at a few merge requests sometimes, especially when we talked about someone being blocked. But the essence here is a manager doesn't like they see outcomes, but not like daily work. And this makes it actually hard. Like, for example, there's an engineer, senior engineer, very great at what they're doing. And the output is rather maybe low as on a metric level, like maybe not enough code that gets shipped, but they are helping everyone in the team and make everyone in the team better. And this is where it strikes with like metrics, and you don't see this initially. Like, I didn't see that they have had a call the whole afternoon with someone else and helping them. So that's sometimes quite good, and to also tell your manager like, hey, you had this call, like, and you helped someone, because it's hard to notice otherwise. So this helped, but otherwise I agree. It comes to a degree of 8 people that you don't see everything. It's harder to evaluate everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think then also some people are better at promoting themselves, right? Like saying, oh, I helped this person and I did actually this and I shipped over there and look at this wonderful code I made.
Mm-hmm.
And another person maybe did even more, but they don't. So for example, for me in an organization, it's always really hard. Like I forget about, writing an email saying, oh, this wonderful thing that I did over here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just doing it. And so I feel that as a manager, this must be also really hard to feel like you're fairly evaluating everybody on the team and so on.
I mean, that's where at least the peer reviews come in. So we have peer reviews and you get the 360 feedback from others. And when you then read these feedbacks, you at least notice like, oh, someone telling the other engineer, hey, thanks for helping me so often. And then you see this. So 360 feedbacks are very valuable for this case. Yeah.
Yeah, you like them as a manager, you like them? Did you like?
Yeah, I like them.
As an engineer, as an individual contributor, do you like them?
An individual contributor, I had a harder time to evaluate my peers. That's the issue. So you want to be nice to someone, but you also want to help them to grow. So there's this trade-off. Yeah. And I think they're anonymous. They're definitely anonymous at GitLab. So I think you only know who evaluated you as a manager, but not who is your peer who evaluated you. So at least there's that.
So I think in what we can sum up here is that it's actually a great experience being an engineering manager for some time, because probably you now look at things in a much more different way. You understand, the problems that engineering managers have. You can also understand how you can help them maybe see your potential or, what you're doing, your impact. And also maybe have a better understanding of KPIs that I don't think that a lot of engineers like them, or, this reviews that we have, that you understand why this instrument is actually valuable for a person that sits in a quite different role and has quite different tasks, right?
Absolutely. I now have a much better feeling what an engineering manager does and like what they do and how it impacts me. So when we talk about KPIs, I know these are not here to blame me, or when I need to do status updates on something, it's not about me telling like, oh, I'm late on something or I didn't deliver in time. It's about just knowing. And there's barely any emotional part of on this. And this helped me a lot. I'm such a better communicator now because I just tell like, hey, that's the status. I believe it will be shipped next week. And everyone is happy and super happy with that. And I was always feeling, oh no, I let them down because it's not ready today. I will delay my status update until it's ready. And this is never the good and the best decision, because it's much better to have transparency and more information. So yeah, I love this pendulum, like the swing. There's a good blog post about this pendulum of going from IC to manager and back, and maybe even to manager again. Because you see this different context and learn so much. Yeah.
Is that from Charity Major, I think, right? From Honeypot?
I need to check up who it is. Yeah.
Cool. So thank you so much, Nicolas, for sharing everything. I found it super interesting and inspiring. And I will link the blog post that we talked about, your blog post that you wrote about this experience as well, and everything else that's important in the show notes.
Yeah, thank you a lot, Michaela. It was exciting to be here. Thanks for having me.
It was my pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
This was another episode of the Software Engineering Unlocked podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please help me spread the word about the podcast. Send the episode to a friend via email, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever messaging system you use, or give it a positive review on your favorite podcasting platform such as Spotify or iTunes. This would mean really a lot to me. So thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye.